Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Columbus Chamber's CEO Insight Story. I'm Colleen Marshall, and I'm so happy to be sitting down today with Cheryl Krueger, who is the president and CEO of C. Krueger's Finest Baked Goods. Cheryl, you are synonymous with cookies, certainly in Central Ohio, but now all over the country. Tell us what that's like to be known as the Cookie Lady.
No, my son, when he was little, used to say, "Why do they call you that, Mom?" I said, "Well, because we like cookies." And he goes, "Okay." But, it's fun. When I was growing up on a farm in northern Ohio, that was when I came home from school. My hope was that my grandma lived with us, and so my hope was that my chores would be to bake cookies. I could eat the cookie dough and bake cookies at the same time. But it's been, started out to being just a hobby that turned into a business, and then turned into be a bigger business, and then we sold it and took some time off to do volunteer work and so on, and got then came back to it, but with a little different flair to it. So we're really excited about the new look of the business.
You say it started out being a hobby. Give us a little bit. This is an insight into the CEO. Give us a little bit of the backstory of what your background was when you realized cookie baking could be my life. But how did it come up to that?
It's funny. There's a story that I like to tell. I was probably 8 years old, 8 or 9 years old, living on a farm, and we lived on a dirt road, so there was very few, maybe one or two cars a day would go up and down the road. That was it. And we didn't have iPads or anything back in the day, so my mom said, "Go out and entertain yourself in the yard or do something, go work in the garden or whatever." So I went to my mom's baked goods cupboard and got some muffin pans, and I would go out and make mud and make mud pies, and I would put stones in some of them that would have that I'd charge 2 cents because those are mud pies with stones, and I'd charge 1 penny for the plain mud pie. And I would set it up on my dad's sawhorses with a piece of plywood on it, and set up my own little roadside stand. And it was funny. I didn't watch it on TV or anything. I mean, it is just something I saw other people do, and I thought I can do that. And so I would sell a few mud pies, now and then, and my mother would come out and she'd say, "I can't believe people are stopping by buying those." and I kind of looked at her and said, "Well, why not?" And I never thought about that they wouldn't. And I think that's kind of the outlook I've had throughout my life. It's like, why not try something new or different? Because who's to say it was going to work or not work? And so that's kind of how the notion got started, just to be that you like the sales transaction type of activity. And then we were poor growing up. We had a farm, and it was a working farm, a dairy farm, and it was, we were real poor. And so at Christmas time, we couldn't afford to buy Christmas gifts, so I'd make cookies, the platters of cookies, and have like 8 or 9 different kinds on a platter, and wrap it up with cellophane and give it to the neighbors and different friends and loved ones. And so that just became, when you get rewarded, people give you compliments about what you're doing, and then it gives you more energy and kind of more confidence to go out and do it even better and more. So that's kind of how it all got started when I was little, and kind of grew into it from there.
When I think, though, of Cheryl's cookies, there is or C. Krueger cookies now,
Yeah.
but your cookies, there's a very distinctive way that you have, that the dough or something, it's just perfectly made. You had a gift with developing this recipe that I would eat one of those cookies and think, why do my cookies never taste like this? And they said you'd think homemade cookies would be better. There had to be at some point that you realized, I've really got a gift here.
I think that's a good point. I think I realized that when I was working, I graduated from college, and I was working at the retail store at Burdines in Florida as a buyer. And people would have birthdays, and so I'd bring a platter of cookies. And people said, "These are really the best cookies I've ever had. They're really good." And it was kind of when Mrs. Fields was on the West Coast doing her thing, and David's Cookies was in New York doing his thing, and we were kind of the Midwest play. And so we just started to, I started to get more and more people say, "Well, you should probably start a company. You should do this business like what Mrs. Fields is doing on the West Coast." And I didn't get a chance to see Mrs. Fields, but when I went to New York, I interviewed with David Lederman to see whether I could do a David's franchise in Columbus, Ohio. And he wanted so much money for the use of his name and the franchise, and I thought, well, not that many people understand who David's Cookies even is. So
Yeah.
I could probably do this on my own and do it better than what they could do it and make more money doing it that way as well. And so started out just, so kind of canned that idea and said, we'll just start out doing our own little business. And it was, like I said, it was just gonna be a hobby, as a part-time hobby. My brother was helping me and a college roommate of mine, and so it was just something, I was doing a lot of traveling at the time, so I thought I could, slow down my travel and do this as a job when I wanted to slow down a little bit. But,
You certainly didn't slow
yeah,
down a little
yeah,
bit.
especially I hit the gas versus the brake, so. So it turned out that, we ended up having our stores kind of evolve from there. And then we went to catalog. The first cookie company in America to do a catalog. And we've kind of been known to do innovative types of things. So we kind of have a leadership role in the marketplace.
You mentioned you're the first company in the country to do the catalog.
Yeah.
I remember looking through that Cheryl's catalog at the great, not only the fabulous array of cookies, but the packaging. You're breezing through this like, oh, it was nothing. Yeah, we started a cookie and then we started the first catalog. You had business insights that maybe people wouldn't expect from a young woman. And so I'm wondering not only about how you became innovative, but how did you convince someone, believe in me, give me funding to expand this business like this?
That is still the hardest part to this day to do, for women especially, is for people to give funding. I mean, especially in the cookie business, because the answer I'd get, the standard answer I'd get when I was trying to raise funds for his company was people say, well, there's 150 linear feet of cookies in every grocery store in America. Why should we buy yours? They're all the same.
I can go buy Oreos.
Exactly. And I said, but they're not all the same. And plus, where you can sell more of the counter, but you also can sell them, as a gift, and you can use different reasons to give them. Like this whole pandemic thing, we've been giving gifts, all kinds of gifts out with messages on them, and they've been very successful. So, but are they buying it because it's a cookie, or are they buying it because there's a message on a product that they can eat? And if it was on a candy bar, it wouldn't be the same success rate. I don't know, but I know that people like to feel good, and our cookies can elicit joy and emotion. But the funding is the hardest part for, especially women leaders, to come by. And you're right, it's hard to convince them. I mean, when I was pregnant with my son, and the business we'd been in business about 8 years at that time. And I remember a banker in town that said, well, we're not gonna lend you any money because you're pregnant.
Oh my
And I'm
gosh.
going, what do you mean, what does that have to do with me and lending money? And he said, well, you're gonna probably quit your business, and we want to invest in companies where the leaders are gonna be there. And I said, I'm not gonna quit the business, I said, because now I'd done this, I was doing it full time. And I said, my hope is to grow the business, not to sell it. But I couldn't convince them, so it was frustrating at the time. And then as we.
What year was that? Because can you
1980
imagine anyone today saying, we're not going to lend you money because you're pregnant?
1991.
That wasn't that
Not
long
that long
ago.
ago. No, not that long ago. And then they lend you money when you don't need it.
What was your secret? How did you finally get the funding? Who did you convince?
Well, we convinced some business people here in town. It was some friends, family, and there's a few business people that I knew in town that not a lot of investment. They were small investors, but they were investors that believed in me, and there were about 16 of them. And when I sold Cheryl's to 1-800-Flowers, they did really well on the transaction. So, and then when we went to raise money for the second venture, then we had a lot easier time to raise the funds because people did well in the first one.
Yeah, I want to go back to the sale. You built this company up. It still has your name on it, Cheryl's Cookies, known coast to coast as being an amazing, it's special when you get a box of cookies, either from Cheryl's or now from C. Krueger's. This is a box of delights that I'm getting from someone who's thinking about me. So how did you, when your identity was so tied up in your brand, what made you make that decision? Maybe now I'm going to sell this.
It was funny. I had no intention of selling the company. It totally happened. Going to a lot of planning sessions where those succession planning sessions and say, okay, how do you want to prepare for retirement? How do you want to live your life? And I wasn't even beginning. My head wasn't even in that mindset to sell the company. But we were doing business with Hallmark at the time, the card company, and they were owned a minority share of our company. And they were great to work with, and really enjoyed them. But they were running into problems with their franchisees or licensees that who owned the database at that time, the licensees or Hallmark Central. And so they were trying to figure out, control issues and so on of the business. So we bought our percentage back from Hallmark. Well, then 1-800-Flowers called us and said, we know you were doing business with Hallmark. We'd like to talk to you about doing a similar arrangement. So they called and they came out and looked at our operation. They said, we would like to be a minority shareholder. I said, okay, great. We started talking a little bit about it. And then it kind of went from that to looking at buying the company. And I thought, oh my gosh, we didn't know what the company was valued at. We never had it valued before. So, and I didn't know if they were serious or not. So we talked a little bit, and then they came back with an offer, and we ran our company like even though we were a privately held company, we ran it like a real publicly traded company. We had a board of directors, comp committee, an audit committee. And we ran it in front of all the committees and said, we need to think about this and get serious if we want to accept this offer or not. So we got the company appraised, and we went back and forth and negotiated, and that was back in October of '04. And by March of '05, we had a deal. And and then I stayed on for 4 more years. They asked me to stay on for 3, then they renewed my contract for another year beyond that. But then at some point in time, it's time to move on. And plus I wanted to take my dad had cancer, and I did a lot of work with James. I wanted to help raise money for the new James Cancer Hospital at the time. And so they gave me a great several years to do that, and that's a real labor of love for me. But so it was purely by accident, and I wish I could sit here and tell you that it was all planned out, but it wasn't. And so I think they're working, they've got the business now, and they can, and it's a good fit for them because they have a candy company and a popcorn company, and they can share the database amongst all the different divisions,
Right.
which makes it good for them.
They consolidated all those services and the overhead, and
Right.
I'm going to take you back in time again. You talked about you had 16 people, 16 different investors who believed in you. At that point, we all have this image that Cheryl's at home every night baking cookies till midnight and then wrapping them in bags for us so they're nice and fresh. But obviously, that's not the way your operation works. So how did you go from I'm baking cookies in my kitchen to take to work for some coworkers who are saying, this is amazing, to I'm going to do this professionally. I need a professional setup. How did you go from point A to point B?
That's a great question. I don't think I've ever been asked that. And it was one of those things where you kind of just gradually go into it. But baking was always something I like to do. It's therapeutic for me. And plus I like eating the dough, and I love cookies. So, and like I said, we had neighbors that loved being my neighbors because I'd say, "Would you like this cookie, or do you like this cookie? Do you like this chocolate chip better? Or like this chocolate chip better?" And they were painfully honest. But started out kind of at that venue, or from that perspective, and then and just continued to kind of grow and develop. And then I realized that. I'm not going to grow this business if I'm working, there's a saying that you can work in the business or on the business. And I was working in the business at the time, which you have to when you're starting out. But at some point in time, you have to work on the business and get strategies in place and processes in place. And it's kind of like the same thing when you're raising a child. There's a lot of similarities between raising a child and raising a business. Because when you're raising a child, you're trusting your child when you take him to Sunday school, church, or if you take him to elementary school. Now they've got another teacher that's going to teach them, and you have to start delegating some of those responsibilities out to teachers or to coaches and so on. And we had the same situation with the business. So I ran into a girl that she was working at a catering company called Abby's Added Touch at the time in Bexley. And they had great food. And I knew Abby, and I knew her husband really well. They worked at the Limit at the time, and Elizabeth was a gal worked in their operation, and she was there. And then Abby and Mark, they sold the business, and Elizabeth was looking for a job. And I said, you do a good job working with Abby, and Mark, why don't you come work with us and help, because I don't have the time to do that. If I'm going to grow the company, I have to work on the business, not in the business. And so she was there for 30-some years after that. So
Did you move into an industrial kitchen? I mean, where was your first setup?
It was in Wyandotte East. So I worked in an apartment, and I worked there, and that's where I made the cookies to begin with, and the test batches. And then our first setup was actually right down the street from where Jenny's is. It was Chesapeake Avenue, 1221 Chesapeake Avenue, and over by Upper Arlington. And we were there for a number of years, then we moved into Johnstown Road at the airport, and stayed there. That was a good move for us. We bought a building that had 3 different sections to it, so we could rent 2 of the sections out and just have 1/3 of the building.
Oh, nice.
And then that rent was paid, the rent we were getting for the other 2 sections were paying for the rent for the whole building. So it was no out-of-pocket for us, which was really helpful at the time. And then we eventually sold that building and moved to Westerville then in 1994, and I've been in Westerville ever since.
You know, when you're trying to move up a recipe, when you're making cookies, and, oh, I better double this batch because I've got to make it, I'm having extra company. You took this amazing recipe that you developed in your kitchen, and all of a sudden, you have to create it on a large scale. Was that difficult to do?
Oh.
Just coming up with this, okay, here's what I do in my kitchen, now I've got to mass produce this.
Yeah, it almost put us out of business. That's a great story, because we started out having made small batches, so it was 2.5 cups of flour or whatever, in a small batches, like a normal family batch. And then so I said, okay, let's multiply by a factor of 5 times. And so I multiplied by 5 times, and it didn't work out. And it's like, well, this is basic math. Why wouldn't it work out? So I kept doing it over and over again. I kept getting the same results. It wasn't working out. And some would get a little closer than others. And I thought, what's going on here? I don't understand what I'm doing wrong. And I'd redo it. And finally, I went to a chef here in town. And I said, I have this cookie cup recipe. I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing wrong. And I said, can you help me? And it's one of the things I love most about Columbus and the Midwest is that when you ask for help, people rarely turn you down. People always want to help. And so he said, sure. He said, where's your facility at? And I said, we just have this little place that was like 1,200 square feet over on Chesapeake Avenue. And he said, I'll meet you there Saturday morning. And I said, that's great. So he met me there, and he looked at, we had a old vegetable scale, like there's a pan on it, and you put flour, I was putting flour on that and weighing the ingredients. He goes, well, that's your problem. It was a scale. And I said, what do you mean? And I said, he said, the problem is you're not getting an exact weight with that scale. He said, you need a digital scale that goes like to the 100th or 1,000th of a pound. Wow. He said, so when you're doing soda and salt and little ingredients that are small portions, that you get the exact measurements. And even the flour, it was amazing how far off it was from just a more archaic scale, if you would, versus a highly sensitive digital scale. So, and of course, we were running out of cash at that time because we were supposed to be open, and we weren't open. We were so excited about the store design and about the equipment and everything else that we forgot about the recipe. So we were trying to get this recipe done. So we missed the grand opening it was at the French Market at the time. That was our first store. And I thought, oh my gosh, and we're going to be out of business before we get our first dollar in. And so we finally got that recipe figured out, and then we got the scale in and made a batch, and it turned out perfect.
Does that chef get free cookies for life?
Yeah, the chef moved to Chicago. I lost track of him. I never knew I could find him. But yeah, if I could track him down, I'll make sure that happens.
You mentioned taking the family recipe. Whose recipe was this? The original recipe?
It was my grandmother's recipe, and then we modified it because back in the day, she would, we were on a live farm, so I mean, we would have, when she made pie, she used it with lard. She didn't use it with shortening, and when she made her own butter.
Oh, wow.
And so, I mean.
Oh, you don't make your own butter?
Yeah, I wish. And so I didn't, and so that butter consistency is different than, and then she used we use a mixer versus we use a bigger Hobart mixer. So it has different effects on the dough. And therefore we had to, we had to make some modifications to the recipe. But, and over the years too, people's tastes change. We were doing this really cool project for Westfield North, where we were in their school district. So one of the commitments we made when we went into the school district is that we were going to help have the school have some cool programs for the students. So we said, let's create an entrepreneurial program for the students. And so what we did is we worked with the students and we said, we're going to help you create a cookie company. And you guys are going to figure out how to market it. You're going to figure out what the recipe's going to be. You're going to figure out what to do with the proceeds. And so they were really jazzed up about it. We had about 100 kids participate.
Wow.
And it was a great, we got an award from the governor of the state of Ohio. It was cool. Well, at any rate, so what happened is that so we had about 20 different batches that the different teams came up with. And we didn't put the name on each batch, we just numbered them, and so no one knew their number, and because we didn't want it to be a popularity contest. The cookie recipe that won had the highest content of salt.
Really?
Yeah. So and then I thought, well, what does that mean to our business? Does it impact our business? Because what we're learning is that kids of today's diet versus 20 years ago are consuming a lot more processed foods, which has a lot more salt in it. So then is that a trigger for us to change our recipes to ever have more salt, because that's what they're leaning towards, which we end up doing. We end up adding a little more salt to our recipes because that was what the customer preferred. So it was not only helpful, no, it was only a good learning experience for them, and they raised about, I think they cleared $15,000-$20,000 that they could use
Wow.
for scholarships, where they could divvy up. They decided they were going to scholarships for the kids that participated in the program, which was great. But also it was a good test model for us to say, okay, what are younger people migrating towards now that we have to be sensitive to? And higher salt was one of them. So it was a win-win.
Well, that brings us to, you are running a different company now. I know you did take a couple of years off. You
Yeah.
worked on charity. You mentioned the James. I
Yeah.
know people are constantly coming up to you and asking you not only for donations of your time, but
Yeah.
of your product.
Right.
All the time. So what made you decide, I think I'm going to go back into business again?
That's a good question, because first of all, we were, I was, already done like about 5 years off, and my son got me involved with a company here in town, and we were looking at that, but it wasn't the same. I didn't know much about it. And one thing, if you're going to get involved in the company, make sure you know what you're doing and that they have the expertise in the category. And I thought, and I looked at it, and I knew something about the cookie business. I thought we could do that, but I said, if we're going to do it more than just cookies. And what can we do to put a different factor to it? So the retail stores that we have now, and they're not as many as we had at Cheryl's, we're not only featuring our product, we're featuring other people's products too. And so that makes it really neat. And they're women that are trying to start a company, so they can't afford the rent, or they can't afford, all the overhead that goes with that. So we're putting them in our store, and then they can be purchased the product in our store. Like Sue Larson's a good example. She makes these phenomenal wedding cakes. They're gorgeous. But she also makes, coconut maroon cookies, and she makes all these different types of really high-end, fancy baked goods. And so we bring her products in, and with her label and her logo on it, and advertise it in the store. And then we get a part of that, and then she gets part of it, and then the customer wins because they get a big offering. And then she has some pies that we're testing right now, and then she'll do muffins and some really interesting things. And then Sass Fast Bakery in Worthington, we test some of her things. She's got these incredible scones. And so we're learning that we test about 4 or 5 different women at a time. One gal, she works
Always women.
Always women, yeah. And in fact, we've never had any men come forward, which is kind of interesting. But we wanted to start the women, because women are having a harder time getting financing, especially in the bakery area. People just think it's a pastime hobby, and they don't really take it seriously as a business. And so we're trying to help these people get started, or get more, or else just get their brand out there more. And so that's been a really rewarding thing for us to do. And then we're also trying to look at things besides cookies that we don't want to get into, but we're paid to do the equipment, because equipment costs a lot of money. And so if we don't spend the money on the equipment, if we can leverage our products together, then we can leverage the equipment better. We're also doing some things where we will make dough for a company. And a company that may have a small company, we do a baker here in town, then we do all their cookie dough for them. It's their recipes, we sign a confidentiality agreement, and then we'll make their cookie dough for them, because it keeps our people busy all the time, so we don't have to lay people off. In the meantime, it helps the people that we're selling it to, because they don't have to buy the equipment. So it's just a little different branding model than we've done in the past. So it's not just all our brand, but we're doing other brands as well. And it seems to be working out pretty good.
Is your son in business with you?
A little bit. He dabbles in it part-time, but then he's also doing sales on his own. So his fiance lives in Florida, so right now he's helping selling some boats down there in the boat business. So we'll see where he ends up at.
You mentioned that you have these other women coming in. That's going to be, it's almost a legacy for you if you are, do you identify with them, that you are
Absolutely.
a mentor for someone who's in the exact same position you were in when people were saying, no, I don't believe it.
When I started the company in 1981, I wish I had the mentoring and support that women have today. There's still a lot of pitfalls. It could be better. But there are so many more women today that are helping women, and I think we're in a great spot right now. And there's still going to be more to be done. I know there's always the concern about, well, you're going up you're breaking the barrier of the glass ceiling and so on in business. And I'm not sure. I chose not to be part of a big company, but a smaller company. But I can tell you that we have a lot of women that work in our company, and they're working together, and they're working in collaborative ways to make a better product than that's ever been done before, more creative than ever before. We take a lot of pride in the design in the boxes, the creativity the way we present products, and the service that we give our customers. So if we can teach other people how to get started on that, that's great. And that would be the legacy, is to help others get started so they can work for themselves, or they want to spend time with their family. The misnomer about entrepreneurship is that I have plenty of time for myself. Like, I haven't found that road yet. Yeah, the more you get involved with it, the more you get passionate about it, the more passionate about it you get, the more time you spend with it. So.
Well, you had catalog business when you first started out. You are online now.
Yeah.
Tell me about the online operation,
Yeah.
because I understand during COVID-19 it has taken off.
Yeah, it was interesting because the internet started in 1997 as we got into it, and in '97 that was our first year, and I remember that our call center was backed up with all these calls. And one of the college kids came and said, "Do you want internet?" And I said, "Internet? What the heck's the internet?" And she said, "We bring orders in online." I said, "Sure." And that year we did like $10,000 on online business. Now it's by far the biggest division of most companies now. What we did, with this whole COVID thing that happened, I don't think anybody imagined that if you would have sat there a year ago and said, "Okay, we're going to face a situation, we're going to shut down all the a lot of airplanes are going to fly empty, cruise ships are going to be docked, hotels are going to be empty, kids aren't going to go to school for 3 or 4 months, you've got stores are going to close for 2-3 months." And people say, "Are you crazy? That's never going to happen." But I mean, it did, and it's like, oh my gosh. So how do you adjust? And you got half your workforce that doesn't want to come to work because they're afraid to work. The other half need to come to work because they need the money. And you want to create a safe environment, so what do you do? And so we thought, well, we're still going to do internet, people can buy online. And so, we started just focusing on the online portion of our business. And it's a matter of just finding the customers online and go after it. And we got lucky, we came up with some creative things, things like we did cookies that we wrapped them in this really clear, just our film, and then said like, "Wash your hands," or "Don't touch your face," or "Virtual hug." Just cute things. And then we did heroes wear, scrubs. And it was just took off, and especially with Nurses Day and doctors and so on, that people were so excited about it to give them as gifts as appreciation. And simple things like thank you. And just something that we knew how to do in the past. And we just started advertising that, and it took off like a rocket ship. And it's like, oh my gosh, we weren't prepared. So we had to scramble in a hurry and try to get.
How much of an increase in sales did you see because of that?
800%. It was crazy.
Unfathomable.
It was just crazy.
Were you able to handle that kind of volume?
No. I mean, we weren't. So we had to beg forgiveness to the customers, say, well, we're going to get it out as quick as we can if you still would like it. And most everybody stayed with it. They said, yeah, we want it. So we were just scrambling and trying to get raw materials in, trying to get the gift containers in, trying to get the film in. I mean, it was a great example of a teamwork working together, trying to get it done.
How did you manage to keep your employees safe in the midst of this?
You know,
Most companies were just shutting down.
We have a gal Elizabeth, the gal I was telling you about, that helped us, and she's in our product development area. She is maniacal, which is great, to making sure that people wear their masks, making sure that that people wash their hands. We have sanitizers at every station. About every 3 feet, we've got sanitizer pumps everywhere. We were doing the 6 feet. When the first day they asked for us to do it, we complied. And we're just trying to use our head. But with food, we had to be cognizant of that anyways, because in food you've got to have a really clean environment. You can't have, and so we've always gotten really good grades on our health checks. And so we didn't have, the transition wasn't as difficult for us because we just are picky about the environment we work in. It has to be perfect all the time. But this disease is tricky. You don't know exactly where it's going to strike next. So we just did the best we could with the knowledge we had at the time.
We had a question for you that came in from Katie Smith, who is the CEO of the editor of CEO Magazine. And she wanted to know, Cheryl, you rose from a rural Ohio farm community to founding a multi-million-dollar corporation with your grandma's cookie recipe at its heart. Many of us have been craving foods from our childhoods during the pandemic. Do you still bake at home? And what have you been baking or cooking these past 8 weeks?
That's great. Yeah, I mean, and that's true. There's a lot of that, home cooked feeling. I was talking to somebody that works over at Crate and Bear, or at Bob Evans, and their carryout, because I was on the board there for a long time, their carryout meatloaf is a popular item for them. And I'm curious, Cracker Barrel, same thing, meatloaf was their number one item, and fried chicken. Kind of those just make you feel.
Comfort.
Yeah, those foods that are comfort food, that's exactly right. So, so that was interesting to see what they were referring to. Our ice cutout cookies are popular, they like the icing. Our old-fashioned chocolate chip cookies, they like that. What I've been making at home, I made some chocolate chip cookies, but I also have this Rice Krispie bar recipe that is right. Instead of using marshmallows, you put peanut butter in it and mix them up, and then you coat it with a chocolate and butterscotch topping. And it didn't have to be baked, so it was simple to do, and it took them in for snacks for people to eat on, and people loved it. So.
Yeah,
And-
at least it's not fattening.
Yeah, well, sort of, kind of.
We're all going to come out of the pandemic a lot heavier because of you.
I hope not. I hope not.
You know, you find yourself, you're back in the cookie business, you find yourself competing against your old brand. Is
Yeah.
that strange for you, thinking, well, I've got to beat them, when really they've taken your name and your brand?
Yeah, they certainly have a leg up on us because they have 35 years of
Right.
starting to start before we did. This country is so big, and there's so much opportunity that, we welcome that competition, but we're doing things differently too. I mean, yes, we do cookies, but we're also doing, like I said, all the different businesses in the stores now. They're shutting down the retail stores and are not renewing the leases as they come up.
Yeah.
They're gonna have more, I think, just of an online play. Whereas we're gonna have our stores, and then we also have, we're not doing much in the catalog, it's all, we have the internet as well, like everybody does. And then our corporate sales area, and we're looking at, we're trying to reinvent some of these categories. What does it mean by bringing women into the company and having women sell some of their homemade goods in our store? And what does that mean? So we're trying to reinvent ourselves and reinvent that category a little bit. So yeah, I mean, it's strange about it, but it's strange, but like I said, we have different customers. Like they're selling right now Costco and these big box retailers. We're not doing that. We're trying to keep it more specialty type cookie, more of a gourmet cookie, and a certain customer that likes that type of product. So I mean, there's plenty of, it's like saying there's room for one football team. There's plenty of team space, there's plenty of space in the country to play.
I think of how difficult it would be if you were an entrepreneur just right now trying to launch a business. We did a story with a couple that was ready to open a brand-new restaurant in German Village, and then the pandemic hit. I can't imagine what it's like being someone like you at the point you were in when you were trying to launch your business and get someone to believe in you. What's your advice to someone who's just now trying to get off the ground in the midst of this crisis?
That is the premier issue right now. Like I said, going back to trying to find financing, especially the market is as erratic as it is right now because the market's so volatile. And people don't know where they're a little bit nervous where to put their money. And do you invest in stocks or bonds? Do you invest in companies? What do you do? It's hard. So I think the first bit of advice is, I would say is that you've got to be passionate about what you're doing. I mean, are you willing to eat, drink, and sleep this business? Because that's what it takes at times. I mean, there's times that even in our business, as much history as I know about the business over the years, I mean, there's still new challenges every day. And you've got to have the determination to fight those challenges. And people say, well, you should be, you're old enough to retire. I said, yeah, but, retirement, I'm not sure is cut out. I'm not sure I'm cut out for retirement because, you work on such an energy level for so long. You love what you do. So first of all, are you passionate about it? Are you willing to take the sacrifices it takes to do that? I mean, and the bigger issue is how much you're willing to risk. At this stage of your life, if you're older and you're starting a company, good luck trying to get it back if you lose it all. So there's got to be a threshold of pain, like say I'm willing to lose 50,000, 100,000, whatever your appetite for loss is, and stick to it. If you don't, then trying to recover that money at this stage of your life probably is going to be even more of a challenge. So you got to be motivated. And then how do you find people that want to work and motivate? be motivated. But right now, we have a lot of people that are, that went on unemployment, and now we're saying come back to work, and some want to come back, some don't want to come back. So how long do you hold
Some
their
are
job?
afraid to come back.
Yeah, and some are afraid, you're exactly right. So then are you afraid, so then how long do we hold their job for them? And, what do they want to do? And they want to work, 1 day with pay and then 4 days, I think they get it for unemployment. And so we're trying to work through all those and try to make accommodations for people who are good people. But until they feel a level of safety that that the government says, okay, everybody's safe to go back to work now. So it's challenging. There's plenty of challenges out there.
You of course, have an amazing reputation for your business acumen and leadership. Is that something that you are able to pass on to the people who are working for you? Or do you feel like, hey, I've got this knowledge, you've got to figure it out on your own? How much of your time is spent really trying to bring those people who are in your company along so that even if you weren't there, that they would know what to do?
Yeah, first of all, I don't take credit for it. God bless me with what I've got, so if I can share it. My goal is I was an education major in college before I got a double major then in business. But it's really important, I think, to pass it on. And when I worked at the Limited, Les passed on, countless lessons in merchandising and in development. And it was manufacturing, it was so helpful. And so I think the more you can teach somebody and to carry on and to, this is our customer service standards, these are our quality control standards. Now, if you want to change that, that's fine, and, start your own company and have your own standards, that's good. But if you're going to set a process up or a model up, this is what it looks like. And don't be afraid to ask for help. We had a guy that goes to our church that is really very successful. And I was talking to him, I said, I know the merchandising area of the business, I know the sales, I know how to make cookies. I said, the financial structure of the company, I'm not as good at. I'd like help there. And I said, do you know somebody that can help us set up the sophisticated financial structure for the business and prepare us so we want to grow to be a $100 million or $200 million company or whatever we want to grow that would have the platform, if you would, to do that with. And so he introduced me to a couple of different people, and it was great. It was a great match. So, and he wouldn't have to do that, but he does it anyways to be helpful. So I think doing it. I think if you think you start a company and you're doing it to help train people, then the profit comes afterwards. The good comes afterwards. If the book Good to Great talks about companies that focus only on making money, never are successful as those that focus on having a great customer experience and a good employee experience, and then the rest follows afterwards. Good comes afterwards.
Can you imagine your grandmother, who made cookies with lard on the farm, would have ever envisioned that the little girl out there selling mud pies for 2 cents is going to build a multi-million-dollar multinational company? What her reaction could have been?
Well, she lived to be 98 and a half years old, so, and she got to see the first 9 or 10 stores open up. And she went to every store opening, and she'd always look at that, and she goes, I'm so surprised these people are buying these cookies. and I said, I'm not. I said, I think we're providing something new and different than that they can buy in a grocery store. And she was one of these people, she was wise beyond her years, and the day she died, she looked at me because she'd hit her head on it, and she was dying of internal bleeding, and she said, Cheryl, just remember one thing, it's never as good as it seems, it's never as bad as it seems. Remember, balance is the key in life. And it's been great, it's been terrific wisdom to follow. Balance your work day, your work life, balance your personal life, time with your kids, time with your, it's so true. And it's been good advice for me to follow.
The icing on those cookies is also incredible. You can tell I've eaten a lot of your cookies. So
Thank you.
What's the secret to the icing? Because that always tasted to me like an icing that might have started with some Crisco in it. It's whatever you do to it,
Yeah.
butter and Crisco, whatever you do, what's the secret?
It really is it's just a matter of butter and powdered sugar and some vanilla, a little bit of salt, and that's pretty much it. And of course, you got milk, the liquid to put in there, and just what the ratio of butter is. Some people like a more buttery, some people like a less buttery. Some people like it with a little more powdered sugar, the sweeter. Some people don't like it as sweet. So that's what we put the ingredient deck in. And then the key is that when you frost them, this is the bigger question. People say, well, how come your cookies don't smear? And the same with Cheryl's. And they were all in the same boat. We let them dry overnight. So you frost them, then you let them set up overnight so they get a little thin crust on them. Then you run them through the package machine the next day. That way, then they don't get all smeary in your wrapper, and that looks a lot better from a customer presentation standpoint.
What is your favorite cookie? Do you have a favorite of all of them?
Oh yeah. I'm more seasonal. So we have a lemon cookie that we introduced last year. It was really good. Lemon glaze on it. That was great for the summer. This year we're introducing a lime cookie. Oh my gosh, that's really good. It's lime icing. That's going to be a good one. And then I love our cutout cookies. I mean, with the icing, and the more icing the better. I'm a big one that likes lots of icing on my cookies. Some people think it's too much, and I think it can never be too much. And then we have an oatmeal cranberry apricot that's really good.
Oh, that sounds great.
And that's a really good one. We decided not to do oatmeal raisins because, like I said, oatmeal raisins for old people. And I don't mean to be condescending about it, but the fact is that it's kind of an ordinary cookie, and we were trying to do more interesting flavors. So we put this apricot cookie with apricots, and there was cranberries in it versus raisins, apricots, and then with oatmeal, and that's turned out to be a really good seller for us as well. So
Oatmeal raisin is my husband's favorite, and you're right, he's pretty old.
we'll have to take a cookie and give him the new one and see if he likes that one better. The apricot one's really good.
You said you don't see yourself retiring. Do you see this business expanding even farther? Because you've had such an amazing, how many people could have started a company, taken it large, spend 5 years working for charity, start a company, make it large again? You're repeating your history, only doing it in a new and better way. Do you see yourself doing this 10 years from now?
I don't know. I think it depends on, God bless me with good health, so then I'll be there as long as I'm productive. If I'm not productive to the business or helping the business, then I'll step aside. But as long as I love what I do and the passion to do it, and love the people I work with, and training them and watching them grow into their new positions, it's exciting to see. I mean, one of the gals that I work with, she was a student at CSG, and she did her May senior project at our company, and that was almost 20 years ago now. And to watch her grow into, she's really accomplished in the internet field, and she's just doing a phenomenal job. And I'm so proud of her, what she's been able to accomplish, and it's like, gives me great satisfaction to see these people grow and develop, and that you had a small part in their development.
Do you think your business trajectory would have been different if you were a man?
Probably, yeah. But first of all, they would have taken me more, they wouldn't have said a man, they wouldn't have worried about a man being pregnant and having a baby and thinking they're going to sell the business, or not be part of the business, or quit the business. That wouldn't have been an issue. I mean, I know that there are men that can go in and the same net worth, and they can get a loan much easier than a woman can. I was part of this leadership group a number of years ago. The group of us were sitting around our table. We were talking about getting loans and so on. And the gentleman said, "Well, I have no problem getting a loan." And I said, "Does your wife have to co-guarantee the note?" He goes, "No." And it's funny, they wanted my husband to co-guarantee in my notes, and we had the same net worth without our spouses. And I thought, it's not where it needs to be yet. It's getting better, but it's not where it needs to be yet.
Are you startled at that? And do you sometimes want to go back to those people who turned you down many, many years ago and say, look what you could have been part of?
Yeah, I mean, I don't like to rub their nose in it. I mean, internally I think about that, and I thought, but I think the best revenge is just showing what you can do, and not, and being proud of it, and doing the best you can. And if it shows, and hopefully they'll learn from their experience, those that won't be so quick to turn down the next person that comes along, so that next person can take advantage of some of the sweat and equity that you laid, or the kind of bricks that you laid down for them to walk on.
People, when they think of making cookies, they think, I'm going to run down to the grocery store and grab some
Right.
eggs. You have a supply chain issue that most of us can't even imagine, and you're trying to do this in the midst of this pandemic. Have you faced some of the issues that we are seeing restaurants are facing, and even grocery stores are facing? Certainly the meat production is down, but you're dependent on farms too.
Yes,
Are
we
you
are.
facing those issues?
Not as bad yet. We're concerned about eggs coming up, making sure their eggs are good. The flour and the sugar, those are pretty good right now. They're pretty solid. The chocolate, we got to be careful of that. But yeah, I mean, we're concerned about the workforce right now, because we're on uncharted water. We just don't know what we don't know. We don't know. So between our workforce, between our source supply and baked goods, our source supply even on non-baked goods, our packaging making sure we got plenty of packaging available is a challenge. So we just have to give it our best shot and see what we can, see what we come up with. But, I mean, we have to be cognizant of that. That's why it's more important than ever to pay your vendors on time, and to make sure that people are getting paid, because, it's difficult. And there's no textbook right now that can write about this, say, okay, turn to page 22, and this is what you do under this situation. Doesn't work that way.
Yeah, none of us expected this. So before I
No.
let you go, I want you to look back at what you would, at this point in your career, with what you know now, what would you say to Cheryl from many, many years ago that she definitely needs to pay attention to on the way up, and what she needs to just let go on the way up? What would be your advice to your younger self?
I think that, I think that the advice my grandmother gave, that make sure balance is important in your life. For a while, I was really absorbed by the work and lost balance in that perspective, and I think that was a costly mistake on my part. And so I would say to maintain that balance is really important. I think being sure that you're passionate about not only the personal part of your life, but also the business part of your life. I love and I'm passionate about both, but you've got to find balance in both, and how do you go about doing that? And then I think that not being consumed with pride that you can't ask for help. I think sometimes I'm so busy trying to say, I'm a woman, I'm going to show we can do this on our own, versus there's no shame in going and asking for help. This financial structure, this conversation is a gentleman, and he's just doing a terrific job helping us. And I'm grateful for his help, and he'll make us a better company, he'll make us better executives because of it. But if I would have let my pride get in the way, like I probably would have 20 years ago, then I probably would have had too much pride to ask him, and I think that pride can be an evil thing if you're not careful.
And also eat cookies.
Yeah, well, that's a given.
Cheryl, thank you so much. This has been an amazing conversation.
You're
You've
welcome.
You've done Central Ohio very proud.
Well, thank
And
you.
we want to remind all of you who are watching us today, as we thank Cheryl Krueger, that not only that she took her time, but that you have tuned in today. And remember to visit the Chamber's website at columbus.org to learn more about future events. The CEO series will continue. We're going to do this once a quarter, and we are grateful for people like Cheryl Krueger who let us pick her brain a little bit. Have a great day.
You're so good at that.